of year, we get a lot of questions about why plants don't survive, or is this plant right for our area, or a number of different questions. And so I always like to go over with gardeners, what it means for a plant to be hardy for our area. In the state of Missouri, if you look at the state map, we have several USDA plant hardiness zones. And these zones are based on the lowest temperature that it can get in the wintertime. And so we have a coding for those plants. And so the very northern part of the state is zone 5B. The middle part of the state is more like 6A to 6B. Southern part can range from 6B to 7B. And so you might take a look on the map and locate where you're at, and just keep in mind what zone you are. So when you go to the nursery or the garden center, you can find plants based on your zone. So if you are in 6A, or let's say 6B, like I am, and I buy a zone 7 plant, it might make it a few winters, but if we have a hard freeze like we did just a couple of months ago, it's not going to make it. It just cannot withstand those low temperatures. So I urge everyone, when you go to the store and you start seeking plants that you want to put in your landscape, it's important to make sure they will survive our winters. Once again, when you're looking at these labels, make sure of what that zone says. And so a lot of the nursery tags, it will give you zone 5, zone 4, as being the lowest zone that it can go. Once again, I hesitate to even recommend zone 7. And so I threw in a picture of a tag. It is an annual, of course, it's just coleus, but I just wanted to go over briefly what some of these tags have on them, because it is very important to do your research and to read what these plants will be like and what the features are. So definitely read that tag. So pull it out of the pot, give it a good glance over. There's always going to be a scientific name, and even a cultivar name. And so what we try to do is get people to look at that scientific name a lot of times, because there are plants out there, like, for example, snowball bush. Well, what is a snowball bush? Is it a hydrangea or is it a viburnum? Because both of them go by snowball bush. So then we take a look at that scientific name and go, oh, okay, they mean a hydrangea. And so that scientific name really clarifies what plants are. And then you can do a little more research based on that scientific name of what the plant is. That tag will also tell you whether it's an annual, a perennial, shrub, tree, so on and so forth. Typically, once again, they will give you that zone, what hardiness zone that plant is in. And so for our area, we probably, for the majority of Missouri, we want to be zone 6 or less in terms of picking plants. And that way we know that they will survive our winters. The tags also provide information on size of plant, the sun exposure, and any cultural informations like, should it be pruned back, or, should you keep it in moist soil, or if it likes to be in the drier soil, so it gives a lot of good information. The other tip I always like to really pass along to gardeners is, if you're interested in buying plants and you're not ready to purchase, but you're still in your research phase, take a picture of that tag, the front and the back, so you don't forget, that scientific name or the cultural requirements or even that zone. And because that tag will help you pick out a lot of plants. And so even when you get at home, if you want to keep a catalog of those tags, I take a picture of them, because those tags for me ultimately get lost. And then I'm shuffling through my cabinets going, okay, where did I put those tags? So take a picture and keep them in a garden journal, a garden binder, and just keep track of them. So the key things to watch out for, we have a lot of people that call in and say, well, I just bought an olive tree, or I just bought, or an almond tree, or, some odd plant that is, we don't normally grow here in Missouri. That's when we have to step back and say, okay, did you realize it's not hardy here? Well, no, I was trying to put it in my front yard. And so just keep in mind that we do have cold sensitive plants, we have non-hardy plants, and we also have heat sensitive plants. And so just keep in mind, like on cold sensitive plants, not all evergreens are right for Missouri. And one that comes to mind is the Colorado blue spruce. Everybody wants a Colorado blue spruce, it seems, but really they cannot handle erratic weather patterns. They can't handle our extreme wet soils. They can't handle our very hot, humid summers. Other ones to watch out for are Leland cypress, and another one is the arborvitaes. I know there seems like arborvitaes are everywhere and they grow quickly. Everybody likes them. But remember, when we have a hard winter or we have that crazy temperature fluctuations, they can get a lot of winter damage. And so just keep that in mind. Other ones to keep track of is rosemary. I know everybody loves rosemary. They put it outside. You might have it for 3 winters in a row, and then all of a sudden it cracks down one winter and you lose it. And other herb plants. And I've lost thyme, I've lost sage, I've lost lavender. A lot of those herbs I classify them as not truly hardy. And so sometimes they can really suffer with, once again, with the cold and with those crazy temperature fluctuations. Another one is crepe myrtle, and we'll talk about that one here in a minute, so hold on for that. And then our non-hardy plants. I know that I've seen nurseries and garden centers over the years really push camellias, gardenias, things like mandevillas, Pandora's box, any of those as being ones that you can stick in the ground and they will live. Well, fact is, a lot of these are zone 7 or higher, so they do not work here. I know I have a gardener here in Cape Girardeau that swears the fact that she can grow a camellia all winter long in a little alcove behind her house. Well, that's a microclimate. She might be able to do that, but if she planted it out in her front yard or she put it in the backyard, it might not make it at all. Well, matter of fact, I can guarantee it won't make it. But just keep in mind when you're looking at these plants and you start thinking about, okay, I would really like to, plant one of these, do your research and make sure that 1, it's hardy for our area, 2, can handle our summer heat. Red valerian at the bottom, I just had a question come in the other day. It's one of those, yes, they can grow it in the Pacific Northwest, but we cannot grow it here in Missouri, or at least southern Missouri. And another one we have difficulties with in southern Missouri, because some of this is localized, region-wise, is perennial black bachelor buttons. And so for us, we might be able to get it to overwinter 1 year, but then all of a sudden that plant collapses and just doesn't do well because of that heat. And so just keep that in mind. Wherever you are in Missouri, you could have special growing situations where some of this may do great and some of it may not. And so just keep in mind, these are on my list of, hey, watch it. These are not guaranteed to make it through the winter or even a hot summer. So one plant that we have seen a lot of trouble with this year is crepe myrtles. And a lot of it's because they are root hardy here in Missouri, but they are not top hardy, at least in the southern part. In the northern parts of Missouri, they may not even be root hardy, depending on where you are and how cold you get. And so one of the questions that have came in is, how can I keep my crepe myrtle from dying back like this? Well, the top picture is the result of a hard winter or a winter killing winter when it comes to the crepe myrtles. So in a hard winter or even a moderate winter, you might lose the top like this. But if you look at the lower picture, you see a lot of new growth coming up from the base, and it will not take that plant very much time at all to start growing and doing well again. You just cut off the top. Well, if you don't want this to happen, there are a series of crepe myrtles that you can buy. That list is over to the right, and I believe it's also in the chat. And they're all Indian names, if you've noticed. But these are hardy to zone 6, and they do really well in Missouri. And you won't get the dieback like you will what's shown in the picture. I also mentioned this already a little bit on the heat-sensitive plants. And once again, I talk about cold hardiness versus heat hardiness. Lupines is our #1 plant that everybody wants. Everybody wants it, but we cannot grow it here in Missouri. We're just too hot and humid. You can start them from seed, but they just sit there. They don't do anything. Other ones, I asked local gardeners what was on their list of do not plants. And maybe in northern Missouri, you might be able to get by with some of these, but here in southern Missouri, we cannot grow them. Astilbes, monkshood, Jensen, Iceland poppies, Pierce, japonica, or Andromeda, and the blue spruce. Those are like the top lists that I have from master gardeners that just say, I've tried them, they just don't work. And once again, it just has to do with our feet. Other cautionary tales, I rush through these. Every year I see hollyhocks and foxglove for sale in stores. Just be aware that they are biennials, which means that they put foliage up the first year, bloom the second year, and then they die. So really, if you buy a foxglove that's in full bloom, just be aware when you put it in the ground and it stops blooming, that plant's done. You're not going to get another year out of it. It's done. And unless it reseeds, you probably won't see foxglove there again. And same goes with hollyhocks. Any catalogs or any stores touting unusual fruit, just do your research and make sure they will grow here in Missouri. Plant health, make sure you're buying plants with good foliage, green foliage that do not have spotted or yellowing dead foliage. Also, take a look at the roots. The roots really can tell you a story about how that plant has been cared for. And so on the bottom picture, on the right, you have white or a creamy white roots. On the left, you have roots that just aren't looking very healthy at all. They're actually starting to turn brown and black. So I always tell them, roots that are white, put it in your cart, keep going, you're going to buy that plant. Roots that are black, put them back because you do not want that plant. And so just keep that in mind when you're purchasing this spring. And think about disease. Always when you're looking at that tag, always if you know a plant gets diseases, make sure that it says disease resistant. And the top three I like to really talk about are roses, crab apples, and fruit trees. And so a lot of those, you really need to look for disease resistant on the tag or you're going to be heading for a lot of trouble. And also just a general warning, just watch the sale racks. They're on sale for a purpose. If they're just quit blooming and they're done for the year, yeah, you might consider them, but watch out for that foliage and the roots because those plants tend to be not as well cared for as if they were in the ground. And I can even say as a plant grower myself, you know, I grow to give away, not sell, but still that plant sits on that bench for 6 to 8 weeks. And even in my greenhouse and out in front of my greenhouse, plants start to suffer after that long. And so sometimes it doesn't matter how well they're cared for. It's just a matter of water pH, not getting fertilized. They just need to be in that ground or in a better situation.